Good. It's official. We're ready. So I hope everybody had a nice Yom Tov, a nice little holiday, Shabbat and Shavuot. If somebody wants to unmute for a half a second, anybody want to report on how the tikkun went? Did anybody experience the tikkun?
Yes.
Okay,
it went
sounds
well.
quiet. Okay, let's go right along.
Happily, everything worked.
We're
they were
at the
informative.
end of the second Mishnah of Pirkei Avot, and Shimon HaTzadik, Simon the righteous, the Shimon the just, has said that the world stands on three things: Torah and worship, divine service, avodah, and Gemilut Chasadim. So we're up to Gemilut Chasadim. So the word Gemilut Chasadim, the word Chesed is often translated as loving kindness, also as just plain love. And Chasadim, therefore, means loves or loving kindnesses, and means as some kind of act, expression of care and love and kindness. The word Gemilut is to bestow. So the bestowing of loving kindness. And the third pillar is the pillar I think that most of us would, based on our discussions before, would acknowledge as being, gotta admit you in here, most central to our concept of sustaining the world. We had a little bit of back and forth about whether we thought the Torah as Torah really is so central to making the world stand. We certainly struggle with the idea that divine worship is something central that makes the world stand or fall. But all of us, I think, acknowledge that if we're not going to be nice to each other, then the world will be a very miserable, unlivable place. So this is where we finally get to the realm of interpersonal relations per se, right? So Torah, whether it means study or it means observance of all the mitzvot, all the commandments of the Torah, doesn't highlight, doesn't emphasize the humanistic value of being just a nice person, being a good person. Divine worship certainly does not highlight that. And when we think about what we want for ourselves, what we want for young people in the world, we want them to be good people. So Gemilut Chasadim is the area that those kinds of values falls into. What Shimon HaTzadik is saying is that it's only part of a triad. It's not the be-all and end-all. The world cannot stand on only one leg. And Gemilut Chasadim is super important. It's as important as these other two, but it's not the only one that's important. What's well, before we get to that, I wanted to, well, no, let's do this first. So, Gemilut Chasadim, acts of loving kindness. How do we understand that? When we use our Sim Shalom prayer book and we pause at the beginning of morning prayers for some kind of Torah study, one of the selections that we often pick is a portion that talks about the importance of acts of loving kindness, and it runs something like this. The question that is raised by the sages: what's the difference between saying Gemilut Chasadim and between saying tzedakah? Right, tzedakah is a famous word. It means being giving and generous and helping other people. So what's the difference? Is there any difference, or are they just synonyms? The Gemara says that there's a differentiation between the two terms. In three things, Gmilut Chasadim excels mere almsgiving, right? Giving charity, giving tzedakah. Almsgiving is the giving of gifts, but Gmilut Chas is the giving of gifts, but Gmilut Chasadim is both the giving of oneself as well as the giving of gifts. So in other words, tzedakah is, I write a check to help somebody out, to help a worthy cause. I give a homeless person a sandwich or something like that. So these are gifts of material goods that you're giving to another person who needs them. And that's certainly a mitzvah. It's essential. It's very important. Milut Chasadim encompasses more. Milut Chasadim encompasses the giving of the self. So, for instance, we've talked about it, we've heard about it. Let's say those who volunteer at Tony's Kitchen, and they're packing up the food, or they're distributing the food. So the food doesn't belong to them. It's been donated by other people who have been generous and given material goods, but they're giving of themselves, right? They're making sure that the person in need, standing on line there, is going to be taken care of. So that's one of the things. The other part of it is how you do it, right? Gemilut Chasadim means that when you give of yourself, you need to be thinking about how your approach to that person that you're trying to help is coming across, right? Are you being nasty? Are you being contemptuous? Are you putting them in their place? Are you making them feel bad? So Gemilut Chasadim is the bestowal of loving kindness, means do this in a way that conveys love, respect, acceptance, and compassion. So that you can't put a money value on, right? I can give somebody $100 and throw it at them, or make them feel small for taking it, or I can give them $1, but make them feel that they have a friend, that they're not alone, that there's people out there that care for them. So how you do the objectively important things that need to be done, that is also Gemilut Chasadim. So that's one differentiation. Another differentiation: almsgiving is done to the poor only, but Gemilut Chasadim is done both to the poor and to the rich. So this follows directly from this, definition. Tzedakah is, and here we have the word needy is an interesting word, to satisfy somebody else's need. And we think of it, if we only think of it in economics, which is a terrible danger that people fall into, and one of the big struggles that we're having today about how do we actually think about the overall nature of our society. Hold on a second, my computer just got unplugged. There. Do we measure things only by economic standards, or do we measure things by that kind of currency of humaneness, of decency? So to be nice to anybody, whether they're a CEO or whether they're a very, very poor person, that's Gmilut Chasadim, to treat people like a mensch, to be a mensch. So that cuts across all strata of society, and it's part of what each and every one of us is capable of. What if you're walking on Shabbos, you don't have any money in your pocket, somebody comes over to you and asks you for money. So you just walk away and you don't say anything and you just ignore them, make believe you didn't hear them? Or do you say, I really wish I could help you. I'm sorry, I'm not carrying any money. Today is my Sabbath. Do you say something that acknowledges them, acknowledges your connection to that person, explains where you are, that makes you not be able to help that person? That doesn't cost anything. And that's part of what this is about, right? Gemilut chasadim doesn't cost anything. Tzedakah costs something. Tzedakah means I take the dollar out of my pocket and I give it to somebody else. I don't have the dollar anymore. Gemilut chasadim is a no loss asset. We'll get to that in a minute. Finally, the third differentiation between tzedakah and gemilut chasadim, the Gemara says that tzedakah is done for the living only. Gemilut chasadim is done to the living and to the dead. Okay, so this is then taking this concept of decency and consideration and respect for one another and applying it. We just concluded Yizkor yesterday, applying it to our concept of a human being in all of the dimensions that make them human. I can't give somebody $1 once they're dead. It's not going to help them. But giving a person who's deceased respect and honor and treating, for instance, their body with dignity and with care, which is what is the essential guiding principle of the whole Jewish tradition of how to deal with the corpse and then the funeral and then the burial. All of that is, we say, chesed shel emet, the truest act of giving chesed, because it has no quid pro quo aspect to it. Right? There is no transactional aspect to it. There is no, well, good, I'll get something from this. Gemilut chasadim is an attitude toward reality, an attitude toward life, and an attitude toward oneself. To understand that to be nice, it doesn't hurt you, is actually a revolutionary idea in some circles. There's a kind of in various kinds of forms. There's sometimes an attitude that nice guys finish last. That became a famous phrase, not because only one person thought of it. It resonates with a lot of people. It resonates with a certain attitude toward life, that you got to watch out for yourself, you got to protect yourself, you got to make sure that nobody steps on you, because they will if you give them a chance. The whole perspective on society and on life is a perspective that doesn't believe in gemilut chasadim as a pillar of the world, something that sustains the world. So this statement by Shimon HaTzadik has a lot of different parts to it. It has a descriptive claim. It's describing how Shimon HaTzadik looks at the world and looks at reality and says, this is really what reality depends on. And then from that descriptive level, it goes into a prescriptive level. And who among us wants to destroy the world? Who among us wants to pull out the legs from under the world, pull the carpet out from under the world so that the world will fall down and tumble and shatter? If you don't want that to happen, then you therefore must engage in strengthening these three pillars. These are the claims of Shimon HaTzadik. I want to, before we continue to the next Mishnah, I want to highlight a section of learning that exists in all traditional Sidurim. This is not something that was added by the conservative movement. That's the sections of Torah study that we look at in the morning prayers is an innovation of the conservative movement. So I'll back up and I'll explain that. So when we have that morning minyan and we then pause before saying the Rabbi's Kaddish, and we say, let's take a selection of Torah study. And we look at one of those selections and we choose one as for instance, that one is included. That occupies a place in the traditional Siddur that used to be occupied by a selection of texts about the sacrifices. And the original idea was we no longer have a temple. We no longer are able to give avodah. We're no longer able to give divine service that is central to sustaining the world, as Shimon HaTzadik teaches us. But at least we can read over the descriptions of the sacrifices and let that count as if it is an offering of a sacrifice. If any of you tune in when we do the kosher salt session, we start with a story about we used to be able to do this. We used to be able to light the fire. We used to be able to say this. Now we don't know it anymore. Now we can at least tell the story. So that's the attitude of the formulation in a traditional Siddur, that we can't do this temple service, this avodah, but we can recall it by reciting the teachings, whether it's from the Torah itself or whether it's from the rabbinic descriptions of how to make the incense and the sacrifices in the old days. So in that respect, what happens is that section takes the first two aspects of Shimon HaTzadik's teaching, Torah and Avodah, and puts them together. So what we're doing is we're learning Torah about Avodah. We're learning the verses, the scripture, and the traditional oral interpretations. We're learning those things, that's the Torah, about the importance of Avodah. So that's how we take care of both of these values at the same time. The conservative Siddur has a very ambivalent feeling toward sacrifice in general and toward the temple service, and tries to get around it as much as it can, reflecting the discomfort of most people in the conservative world. And therefore, it completely eliminated those texts and instead only went for Gemilut Chasadim. And therefore, all the texts that we have, except for maybe one, are all about walk in God's ways, be nice, take care of people who are needy. There is one text that I can think of that says on Shabbat, if you don't study Torah during the week, you should study Torah on Shabbat. That's nice. So, and none of these teachings are wrong. They're beautiful teachings. They're great. But a choice was made to move away from the other two pillars and to focus only on, or mostly on that pillar of Gemilut Chasadim. So that's in that section of the morning prayers. But before we get to that section, we have at the very, 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 very beginning of the morning prayers, we have a whole bunch of prayers that are assumed to be recited before you actually get to shul. So, Modeh Ani, for instance, right? That I thank you, God, for giving me back my soul when I wake up in the morning. You are so loving, and you are so faithful and reliable. That prayer, you don't theoretically say it once you get to the synagogue. You're actually supposed to say it when you open your eyes while you're still in bed. So that's an individual prayer that's supposed to be said prior to coming into your prayer practice. It's a part of an expanded practice. When you wash your hands, when you do your personal hygiene in the morning, you wash your hands and then you take the cup and you pour water over your hands and you make a blessing. So that's prayer. Blessings are prayers. You didn't do that, you actually maybe even haven't really fully gotten dressed. You go to the bathroom, you make a prayer. So all of these kinds of prayers are prayers that have nothing to do with being in a prayer service per se. Originally, the blessings that we recite at the very start of our prayer service Shenatan lasachvivina lahavchin ben yom uven laila. So, and thank you for making me a Jew, and thank you for letting the rooster know the difference between day and night, and thank you for putting a firm ground under my feet. So all of those blessings actually originally were blessings that you recited in your morning routine of getting up. As you got dressed, you said you made a blessing. As you put your shoes on, you made a blessing. So we've transferred them into the first moments of the morning service. But then there's another set of blessings that are before the morning service begins, and that is the blessings to study Torah. Those blessings, I mentioned them yesterday in the sharing Shabbat that I offered. There are 3 blessings that we recite to praise God and to acknowledge that we are commanded to study Torah. So we say these 3 blessings. I'm not going to go over them again. And then when you say a blessing for a mitzvah, you then have to do the mitzvah. So you take a lulav, and before you shake the lulav the right way, you make a blessing. God, you commanded me and sanctified me with commandments. You commanded me to take the lulav. And then you shake the lulav. You do the mitzvah. So with a sukkah, right? You're going to eat in the sukkah. So you make blessings on the food, and you say, God, you commanded me to eat, to dwell in the sukkah, and then you eat the food as part of the mitzvah of sitting in the sukkah. So there's a mitzvah to study Torah. So we make these blessings as preparation to study Torah, and then we're supposed to study some Torah. So what do? We study Torah real quick. This is not in-depth Torah, but real quick. Traditionally, what we do is we recite the priestly blessing, because those are 3 short verses from the Torah. They're going to be in this coming Shabbat's Torah portion. So those are chosen, and I've written about this, as the quintessential statement of Torah, right? May God bless you and keep you. May God shine God's countenance upon you, all of that kind of stuff. So that stands for the written Torah. In our Sim Shalom Sidur for Shabbat, this is all on page 64. The blessings on 63. 64 starts with that. The addition of the conservative movement is to add a different section of Torah in addition to the priestly blessing. So they give us the idea, again, of social justice, of being good, of tzedakah, of loving your neighbor as yourself. Back to Gemilut Chasadim. So that's highlighted again. And then back to what happens in any traditional Siddur, we have the following teachings. First from the Mishnah, and then an expansion from the Gemara. So the Mishnah is the first Mishnah in the tractate of Peah. These are the deeds for which there is no prescribed measure: leaving crops at the corner of a field for the poor, offering first fruits as a gift to the temple. That's the Shavuot idea. Bringing special offerings to the temple on the 3 festivals, doing deeds of loving kindness, and studying Torah. So those are the examples. In the Mishnah itself, it's pretty short. Elu dvarim she'en lahem shiur. HaPeah ve'habikurim ve'arayon u'gemilut chasadim ve'talmud Torah. So those are the examples. If we look at those examples, so we have Talmud Torah as the concluding example, Torah. We have Gemilut Chasadim mentioned explicitly. And we also have Peah, Bikurim, Urayon. And these are tzedakah, giving gifts to the poor, and then giving gifts to God, giving kind of tzedakah to God, who is certainly not needy per se, and yet it's part of the idea of offering thanks, being gracious and grateful. And Rayon is sacrifices. So both Bikurim and Rayon are avodah. So these 3 pillars are definitely touched on by this Mishnah in Peah. What is the Mishnah telling us? The Mishnah is telling us is that there's no measure. There's no minimum. There's no maximum. Right? There's no quantification for these mitzvot. There's no, here's the minimum amount of Torah that you can do and be satisfied that you gave your, that you satisfied your obligation. There's no minimum, there's no maximum to being nice, right? Oh, if I only do this much niceness, good. I satisfied my obligation to be nice for today. How much nice do I have to be after all? The answer is the word how much doesn't apply to that, and it doesn't apply to serving God. How much do I need to do to serve God in order to be quits with God? That I've done my duty, right? So the how muchness doesn't apply. So then this Mishnah is expanded upon in the Gemara, and the idea that there's no measure is made into a spiritual idea. And this is the next quote in the traditional Siddur. These are the deeds that yield immediate fruit in this world and continue to yield fruit in the coming world. Honoring parents, doing deeds of loving kindness, attending the house of study punctually, morning and evening, providing hospitality, visiting the sick, helping the needy bride, attending to the dead, probing at the meaning of prayer, making peace between one person and another and between a couple. And the study of the Torah is the most basic of all. That's the translation here. In the Hebrew, it's Talmud Torah keneged kulam. Talmud Torah equals all of them combined, right? The study of Torah is equivalent to all of them. If you put them on scales and you put Talmud Torah over here and all of the other magnificent, wonderful things that a person should be doing, studying the Torah is of equal weight to all of the others combined. The discussion in the Gemara says, what's more important, deeds, actions, or studying Torah? Which is has the most importance? And they debate it, and then they finally say studying is the most important when it leads to action, right? Dola Torah hamevi'ah lidei ma'aseh. Right? The study is really important, but it can't be off in an ivory tower without the implications of the study being lived out in real life. So this is the insistence that you must study for sure, and the studying is enriching, and the study is going to enlighten, and it's going to give you a whole sense of what life is really supposed to be about, and then go live, go put it into practice. Go do these things. Okay, so I talked a lot here, and any last comments by anybody? You can unmute yourself. Josie, yeah. You have to unmute. Yeah.
You mentioned something about...
oh, wait a second.
Can you hear
Everybody
me?
hearing?
Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you. I did my sound down, yeah.
Okay. You mentioned something about treating other people with dignity and the idea of if you can't give money on Shabbat, which I think is something that must have happened to you as you walk to the synagogue.
It happens to me sometimes, yes.
You said there's no cost, but I think the cost is there in that you have to stop thinking about yourself all the time and think about... Yeah, you could say, I'm in a big hurry. I got to get the services. I'm the rabbi. But instead you say, I can't help you because I have a religious obligation today. Yeah.
So let me tell you, it's a big benefit when somebody stops me from thinking about being a rabbi. Okay. I'm very appreciative. It's great.
Okay.
Yeah. Any last? Yes, Sarita. Yeah. And then we're going to conclude. Go ahead.
So I'm glad that you actually ended what you were talking about, because as I think about these three things, it seems to me that both the prayer and studying Torah should lead to the way we treat other people. And it's depressing to me sometimes when, I grew up in Lakewood, which has a very big Haredi population. And when it seems to me that, in fact, the study of Torah and prayer end up being the be all and end all and don't lead to a wider treating other people well. I find that really problematic. So I wanted to say that. The other thing I wanted to say is that, when you do things for other people and you do take yourself then out of yourself, there's a benefit to you. It's how you feel after that. So that's actually what I tried to convey in the small little piece that I just wrote for Shomrei Week, is that, in some sense, it helps yourself. It really enhances your own sense of self-worth as well when you make that connection with other people.
Thank you. Okay, on that note, we're going to conclude for today, and I look forward to seeing people next week. Okay.
Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Oh,
Thank you. Thank
Good
you.
luck.
So Rita, that